Hi, I'm Rachel, and this is my Would You Read It Challenge video for February 2025. If you're watching this close to when I post it, yes, I am definitely a little belated with this video. My major excuse is always things are busy. I keep myself pretty busy on my own with some reading and writing stuff. Work is also very busy right now. And I am in the middle of Purim rehearsals for my synagogue spiel, which is really fun. And it's really only a couple of weeks of like frenzied activity, and then that'll be over. So, anyway, in these Would You Read It challenge videos, this is a challenge or a meme taken from Et2Brody, who I'll link down below. The original challenge was to pick a variety of books, read the first sentence, and then ask your audience, share with your audience, and ask your audience, would you want to go forward with this book? And I have tweaked things a little bit to be more like a few paragraphs to the first page of my books. And for my books that I'm pulling out, I'm always going back to the BookTube Prize in Fiction. So the BookTube Prize was started by Robert Sheard in 2019 as a way for the literary bookdernet community to come together to judge the best in fiction and nonfiction published in the US the year before, mostly literary fiction. And currently, right now, another thing I do have to put on my desperate to-do list is I am an official judge for the 2025 Octofinals in fiction, and all of our ballots are due to Robert by the 30th of this month, so I have to finish all of that reading, which I can't talk about because that's part of the rules of judging. For these videos, I go back to yesteryear and look at old ballots of the prize and, at least get to consider all of the books or the first pages of all of the books. And in this video, in fact, I am moving on to a new year. I am considering the long list for the 2022 BookTube Prize in Fiction, and unsurprisingly, am starting with Group A, which is 6 books, so I go 6 books at a time in these videos, and get to discuss them with you. It's very exciting. So out of these 6 books in Group A, I have read one of them. I read it on my own, out of my own interest, not for the prize. And then the other 5 books are, pretty new to me. I've heard of, I think, well, all of them, back in the day, but I haven't read any of them. But now I'm just going to go ahead and read the first paragraphs, then, disclose the books, and then ultimately disclose my thoughts to you. Okay, so starting with book 1. And I will just go ahead and, give the content warning of some adult language coming up. Chapter 1, 1 month after conception. The question for Reese, were married men just desperately attractive to her? Or was the pool of men who were available to her as a trans woman only those who had already locked down a cis wife and could now explore with her? The easy answer, the one that all her girls advocated, was to call men dogs. But now here's Reese, sneaking around with another handsome, charming, motherfucking cheater. Look at her, wearing a black lace dress and sitting in his parked Beamer, waiting while he goes into a Duane Reade to buy condoms. Then she's going to let him come over to her apartment, avoid the pointed glare of her roommate Iris, and have him fuck her right on the trite floral bedspread that the last married dude bought her so that her room would seem a little more girly and naughty when he snuck away from his wife. Reese had already diagnosed her own problem. She didn't know how to be alone. She fled from her own company, from her own solitude. Along with telling her how awful her cheating men were, her friends also told her after 2 major breakups she needed to learn how to be herself, by herself. But she couldn't be alone in any kind of moderate way. Give her a week to herself and she began to isolate, cultivating an ash pile of loneliness that built on itself exponentially until she was daydreaming about selling everything and drifting away on a boat toward nowhere. To jolt her back to life, she went on Grindr or Tinder or whatever and administered 10,000 volts to the heart by chasing the most dramatic tachycardia of an affair she could find. Married men were the best for fleeing loneliness because married men also didn't know how to be alone. Married men were experts at being together, at not letting go, no matter what, until death do us part. And that was from Detransition Baby by Tori Peters. Book 2. Earth to Earth. While in prison, I received a dictionary. It was sent to me with a note. This is the note I would take to a deserted island. Other books were to arrive from my teacher, but as she had known, this one proved of endless use. The first word I looked up was the word sentence. I had received an impossible sentence of 60 years from the lips of a judge who believed in an afterlife. So the word with its yawning C, its belligerent little E's, with its hissing sibilants and double N's, this repetitive bummer of a word made of slyly sounding letters that surrounded an isolate human T, that word was in my thoughts every moment of every day. Without a doubt, had the dictionary not arrived, this light word that lay so heavily upon me would have crushed me, or what was left of me after the strangeness of what I had done. I was at a perilous age when I committed my crime. Although in my 30s, I still clung to a teenager's physical pursuits and mental habits. It was 2005, but 1999 was how I partied, drinking and drugging like I was 17, although my liver kept trying to tell me it was over, an outraged decade later. For many reasons, I didn't know who I was yet. Now that I have a better idea, I will tell you this. I am an ugly woman. Not the type of ugly that guys write about or make movies about, where suddenly I have a blast of blinding instructional beauty. I am not about teachable moments, nor am I beautiful on the inside. I enjoy lying, for instance, and am good at selling people useless things for prices they can't afford. Of course, now that I am rehabilitated, I only sell words. Collections of words, between cardboard covers. And that was from The Sentence by Louise Erdrich. Book 3. Part 1. Home. 1. Dear Dad, how are you? I was expelled. Have you ever heard of choice time? That's my favorite class. I do choice time at the Take Apart Center, which is the place in our classroom where we put on safety goggles and take things apart. It's a bit dangerous. The first half of the class we take things apart and then Madame rings a bell, which means it's the second half of the class and we're supposed to put things back together. It doesn't make sense because it takes way longer to put things back together than taking them apart. I tried to talk to Mom about it, and she said I should just start putting things back together sooner, before Madame rings the bell. But when I did that, Madame told me I had to wait for the bell. I told Madame the problem with time, but she didn't like my tone, which was a lashing out tone, which I'm supposed to be working on. Mom is in her 3rd trimester. She's cracking up. Gord is trapped inside her. I asked her what she wanted for her birthday, and she said a cold IPA and a holiday. Grandma lives with us now. She has one foot in the grave. She's not afraid of anything. I asked her where you were, and she said that's the $64,000 question. She says she misses Grandpa. She said that by the time she gets to heaven, he'll probably have left. Men, she says, they come and they... And that's from Fight Night by Miriam Tays. Book 4. When you see yourself in a mirror, do you like what you see? I try not to look. I think a lot of people like me are like that. When you say, people like me, what do you mean? In the corner of a small living room of the small country house at the end of the dirt road, beneath the blue Carolina sky, the dark-skinned 5-year-old boy sat with his knees pulled to his chest and his small dark arms wrapped around his legs, and it took all he had to contain the laughter inside of the thrumming cage of his chest. His mother, seated on the couch with her dark hands folded into her lap and her brow furrowed like Mr. Johnson's fields at the very end of winter, pursed her lips and fidgeted with the fabric on the tattered gray dress she wore. It was a dress she'd bought before the boy even came into this world. It aged with him. The threads around the hem had lost their grip on things. They broke apart and reached their dangling necks in every direction that might take them away. And now, after 7 years of hard work, the dress looked like it would not be able to hold its fraying fabric together much longer. And that was from Hell of a Book by Jason Mott. Book 5. Editor's Note. Disclosure. My father, a drummer named Jimmy Curtis, fell in love with Opal Jewel in the summer of 1970. For the duration of the affair, he was married to my mother, who in 71 got pregnant with me. Before my birth, before the world had any chance to know much about my father beyond these facts, he was beaten to death by a racist gang during the riot at Rivingston's Showcase. And before my mother could bury his broken body, his mistress blazed into stardom. This is a personal history that, throughout my life, I have taken significant pains to conceal. In my 25 years as a journalist, I have never needed to lean on it. I got here under my own steam, toured the world's most dazzling arenas with you too, won awards for following funny money raised by benefit concerts, even interviewed artists who, oblivious of my connections, cited Opal Jewel and Nev Charles together and solo as their heroes. Stanajold, the White Stripes, and the Yeah Yeah Yeahs, to name just a few. All this work I've compiled as Sonny Shelton, the name I put to legal papers on my 18th birthday. My chosen name, this hard-earned byline, cobbled together with the first initial of my birth name, my favorite word as a child, and the Philadelphia street where the umber facade of my maternal grandmother's row house decays, flake by flake. You can say that every decision I've made to divorce myself from this violent birth of Opal and Nev has been like this, intentional and a touch paranoid. And that was from Final Revival of Opal and Nev by Donnie Walton. And finally, Book 6, St. Jude, the madness of an autumn prairie cold front coming through. You could feel it. Something terrible was going to happen. The sun low in the sky, a minor light, a cooling star. Gust after gust of disorder. Trees restless, temperatures falling, and the whole northern religion of things coming to an end. No child in the yards here. Shadows lengthened on yellowing zoysia. Red oaks and pin oaks and swamp white oaks rained acorns on houses with no mortgage. Storm windows shuddered in the empty bedrooms. And the drone and hiccup of a clothes dryer, the nasal contention of a leaf blower, the ripening of local apples in a paper bag, the smell of the gasoline with which Alfred Lambert had cleaned the paintbrush from his morning painting of the wicker love seat. 3 in the afternoon was the time of danger in these gerontocratic suburbs of St. Jude. Alfred had awakened in the great blue chair in which he'd been sleeping since lunch. He'd had his nap, and there would be no local news until 5 o'clock. 2 empty hours were a sinus in which infection spread. He struggled to his feet and stood by the ping-pong table, listening in vain for Enid. Ringing throughout the house was an alarm bell that no one but Alfred and Enid could hear directly. It was the alarm bell of anxiety. It was like one of those big cast-iron dishes with an electric clapper that sent schoolchildren into the street in fire drills. But now it had been ringing for so many hours that the Lamberts no longer heard the message of bell ringing. But, as with any sound that continues for so long, you have the leisure to learn its component sounds. As with any word, you stare at it until it resolves itself into a string of dead letters. Instead of hearing a clapper rapidly striking a metallic resonator, not a pure tone, but a granular sequence of percussions with a keening overlay of overtones, and I'm going to stop there and say that this is from Crossroads by Jonathan Franzen. Okay, so my thoughts. I guess what struck me about these is that, and it's a curse of some literary fiction, that not a lot happens. And in the first page, which in itself, I guess, maybe if it was a random page, like page 112, maybe that'd be okay, but the first page? I mean, I'm trying to think about, what I learned about what's going on here. And I'll say that the book I actually read was Detransition Baby, and I like this first page. Obviously, this is a sort of identity politics book, and, there's different mileage on it, but, on people who enjoy reading about people who identify themselves by identity politics. But, the writing is pretty crisp, and, for whatever character Reese is, we're certainly getting an understanding of who she is, her in terms of sexuality and in terms of relationships. And really, it's the crispness of the writing, although for me, ultimately, it just devolved a little too much. Her and the other characters in this book, I feel like their personalities weren't much more than their, identity politics talking points. So I ultimately struggled a little with this book, but I do feel like there was some crisp writing on this first page. Then we have the Louise Erdrich book, which is, in a way, not what I was expecting. There's a lot in here that, you'd want to learn more about, like, why is this woman in prison for 60 years? I mean, she's obviously being very vague about her crime. And can we even trust her if she says that she, is so comfortable with lying? And then she puts in the kicker, which really seems to imply that part of the reason she's a liar is because she's a bookseller. I wonder if Louise Erdrich is poking fun at herself. I'm not sure how many autobiographical details are in this book or not. But, you know, there's a fun writing exercise or language exercise in here, linguistics exercise about the dictionary and looking at words directly. But ultimately, you know, to me, that's not as interesting as character. Why is character in prison? Okay. So then book number 3 is like a little bit, I guess, experimental in a way. It seems like we're starting with a letter. And, you know, some of the elements of the letter, I don't know, it feels like it's some sort of archetypal thing. Like, what type of class actually is ringing a bell, like your Pavlov's dog, and taking things apart and putting them back together again, you know? I don't know. This isn't speaking to me as much. I mean, I guess, you know, you have those more interesting stereotypical niggles of like a mother who's, you know, cracking up because she's hormonal and pregnant, and a father who seems to be missing to the point where no one knows where he is. So it's interesting, like in and of itself, that the son, or the child I should say, is talking to him. I don't know if it's a son actually. I don't know, you know, I read Taves's other book for the Book 2 prize, Women Talking. I guess it was also experimental in its way, but I enjoyed it more. You know, I was in on the conceit of it, you know, sitting in a room with women in a community who were talking, whereas I don't really know the context here yet. I don't know why I care yet, so there is that. Then we have book number 4, which starts with some, you know, completely out of context quotes to try to draw you in, but then, you know, obviously doesn't explain what, you know, these quotes about, you know, looking in the mirror and what type of person you are and what it really means. We go entirely to a small boy who is cracking himself up, it seems, laughing, and then I guess we're setting the scene of some sort of poverty, because we pay a lot of attention to the physicality of a dress that is, you know, falling apart, which is some interesting scene setting, but again, you know, it doesn't go yet into the specifics of the story, but, you know, the writing is okay, I think. Then we go into more, I guess, experimental writing in a way with the final revival of Opal and Nev, because it feels like maybe this is written like reportage, like almost like it's nonfiction, or I feel like the editor's note is part of the story, I assume, and I feel like this is one of those books that's, you know, it's about fictional celebrities, and there's an interesting, I guess, premise here about like trying to hear from the son of a famous musician who was killed in a racist situation, and then his mistress is like this star, and obviously you can understand why there's a lot of personal drama in there. But this is, of course, all set up. I mean, first, you know, Opal and Nev aren't the center of the story. Well, maybe they are with the title. But who is this character? How did he get to be, I guess, a journalist who, I guess, an entertainment journalist, it seems like, who follows, you know, musicians around? And do they know who his father is? Even, well, maybe not, because I guess of the, you know, the new name could also, you know, hide that information too, not just his connection to Opal and Nev. But yeah, this feels still mostly like setup. And finally, there's book number 6, the Franzen book. It kind of seems promising. You know, maybe we'll be talking about the economic interests of the suburbs, but you know, he does go on and on and on, setting the scene, like all the physicality of the neighborhood. We only get a very little bit into like a character, this Alfred character who is a painter, and then like this thing with the sound that only him and his wife could hear, that feels way too indulgent to me. It just really does. You know, who cares about, you know, what the sound sounds like and why, and like the, you know, granular details of what they hear because they've been hearing it for so long. This isn't telling us anything really real. It's annoying. I feel like I'm reminded a bit of The Bee Sting, which is another Book 2 prize winner in fiction, and I thought that it was really overwrought in his storytelling as well, and people were comparing it to Franzen, so I'm kind of maybe biased a bit against this one. And then I just really feel like, yes, there's some beautiful descriptive writing of apples in a paper bag, but why do I care about this character? Don't just tell me the granular details of whatever warning you're foreshadowing. Please, let's move on here. So, I don't know, I guess I would say out of the books I haven't read, I'd probably be the most interested in Louise Erdrich's The Sentence, although part of that is more about the author herself, that I'm interested in reading her. I'm not sure what I think of this lying narrator and the opaque reason she's in prison and why being a bookseller is so nefarious. Maybe I should stop going to, indie bookstores like Louise Erdrich's and stick with used bookstores or something. Anyway. So those are my thoughts. I'd love to hear your thoughts about what I read, or if you've read these books yourselves, what your thoughts of the books are. I will link to Goodreads pages down below and my review of Detransition Baby. And that about covers it for me now. Alas, I am still stuck in some February booktubing. My next video, I hope should be pretty imminent, will be my final Am Reading wrap-up of February, so stay tuned for that. And then hopefully I can finally move into March. And of course, another huge part of March will be continuing to read my ballot that I'm officially reading this year for the BookTube Prize. I still have a little over half to go, but I always pull things together. I'm pretty hopeful. And I hope all of you who are judging for the BookTube Prize are feeling confident in our assignments together. I will look forward to ultimately hearing our thoughts about this long list of books. But for now, thanks so much for watching, everyone, and I'll see you next time.